All right, everyone, welcome. Hi, my name is Mark, and thanks for taking the time to join us for this webinar. I'll be sharing with you today about RemoteWinBox Admiral and how we're helping customers and what's new with our service. So RemoteWinBox is our shared cloud platform. And anyone with a MikroTik can simply go to RemoteWinBox.com and create a free account. You click the activation link, and I'll be allowing people here as we go along. Click the activation link and begin managing your routers in a few seconds by copy and pasting a simple script. Our dashboard has a user-friendly and intuitive interface with multiple layers of security, including two-factor, randomized credentials, and firewall hardening. For as low as 50 cents per router per month, you can have easy-to-use remote access that works through NAT and LTE and real-time health information. Our premium subscription is $2 per router per month and unlocks all of our features, including automated backups for config management, disaster recovery, fleet firmware management, bulk configuration update tools, and historical statistics. We have no contracts or long-term commitments, and your first router is on us. You may have heard of Admiral. And Admiral is our on-premise MikroTik fleet management solution that has all the same benefits as RemoteWinBox. It's an affordable solution for larger ISPs or managed service providers who are looking to add secure automation and orchestration. It's a pre-configured turnkey 1U appliance that you install in your local data center, or we can host it in our DC, and it's dedicated to your deployment. There's an annual subscription cost that starts at $4,500 and goes up to $12,000 per year, depending on the size of your network and the number of routers. The bulk annual pricing is a significant savings over cloud for high volume. One of the benefits of Admiral is that our team of experts who are MikroTik certified and full stack developers can provide custom MikroTik software solutions, which could be anything from custom reporting of IPTV diagnostics to troubleshooting tools for your MikroTik fleet. In a few moments, I'll show you a demo of RemoteWinBox, and we'll pay special attention to things that are new. And that includes historical data, the addition of security scans, and a read-only safe-to-use dashboard for end users. So let's take a look. Give me a moment here while I switch screens. All right. So this is our dashboard, which you can go to app.remotewinbox.com/8080, or you can click on my account by going to remotewinbox.com. And if you don't already have an account, it's as easy as clicking register here and filling out the form and clicking register. You'll get an email from us to activate your account, and at that point, you can log in. If you haven't logged in yet, or it's been a week, we've got two-factor authentication. So I'm going to grab my two-factor authentication here. And I can remember this device for a little over a week. As soon as I log in, you can see that I get a dashboard view here that I can take a look and see at a glance how my network health is going. You can see which routers are online and communicating well with the service, which routers are offline, and which routers we're having trouble talking to, which means they're online, but something isn't working. Could be that SSH is disabled, or we don't have permissions to access the router to perform full functionality of the dashboard. You can also see that we've got a map view for easy identification of which routers are down and up, and help isolate where an outage might be happening. And then as far as new features go, both the chart here that shows CPU, RAM, and disk is new. And so we can see at a glance, if we have any routers that are in the red, we might want to take a look at those. Disk is maybe not so meaningful unless the disk is full and you're trying to do logs. But obviously RAM or CPU at a high level would be concerning and something I'd want to take a look at. Historical bandwidth is also new, and I can look at the day, the week, or the month, and the chart will redraw and show me what aggregate bandwidth looks like for my network and for my devices. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be releasing this same information on a per router basis. So if we wanted to today come down and take a look at which routers were having high RAM usage, I can jump down here, sort by RAM. Now I can see that this device has a high RAM usage and this device also. And both of these are smaller home routers that don't have a lot of RAM available. And so I could log in and start debugging why those devices are showing high. Or I can say, hey, that's expected behavior for those devices. I can equally sort by CPU or disk and take a look at those ones. This one in particular is one of my VPN servers. So I know that a 40% CPU is actually legitimate. He's doing a lot of work. So if this is the first time using our service, what you would do is come to add router and your dashboard would be blank. You can put in a nickname of whatever you'd like. If you need to update your WinBox port because you've adjusted it in IP services to use something other than 8291, you'd enter that here. Group permissions allows you to set this router for read-only access. Keep in mind, if you set us for read-only access, part of the dashboard will work and part will not. So for example, we would not be able to update firmware or take backups. No, backups would work. We wouldn't be able to update firmware or do the bulk configuration push tool that we'll talk about in a few minutes. Both of those features would be disabled if you selected read-only. MTIC VG API is an additional port translation that allows you to, one of our customers, for example, said, hey, can I SSH to a server on the other side of private network? And sure, you can change this to whatever port you want it to use, 22, for example. And then when your router gets translated here, we could pass that through to your end user device so that you could have a server with SSH, even if it's behind a NAT or LTE. And then tags here allows you to sort your network by easy to search later on. Once we've submitted this, we get a configuration that we can click to copy here and then paste it into a WinBox terminal session. And then from that point on, I'd be able to go to this URL to use WinBox, and this URL in our example would be able to SSH to the server behind the MikroTik router. Taking a look at tags, if you want to add a tag, it's as easy as typing in a new tag name and hitting save. For security, this is a new feature. So what security does is that it will scan your MikroTik for known Maris exploits, where you intend to add this if it's popular. But right now, what it'll do is check to see if there's admin with no password, and it'll check for, let's see what this one says. The IP socks is enabled. It'll check for malicious files, malicious users, and malicious scripts. And if any of those are found, you'll see those warning icons show up here. And so I can turn on scan testing, and once per day, we will security scan that router. And if you wanted to scan routers, on demand, we could queue that up to rescan right now, and you'll get a message that those are being rescanned. So our backups manager allows for automated daily snapshots of all of your MikroTiks that are enabled. And that'll happen once a day if you let it run automated, or you can take a backup of any of your routers at any time by just clicking on create new backup. You'll see there, backup has started. By the time I jump in here to view backups, it should be complete. And you'll see this is now in server time. And I can either view this backup and take a look at what's there now, or I can come and compare the backup today to sometime in the past. And if I pick a really old backup from a while ago, I'm sure that I'll find some changes somewhere in the configuration. So here's some changes that are different now than they were in the past. And here's some scripts that were there in the past and aren't there today. So this is useful for not only comparing what's different today than was last week, to take a look at what may be broken or not working the way that it was in the past, but also for recovering a router that has either been hit by lightning or disabled in some other way, and we need to replace that router. It's an easy way to copy and paste that into a new router so that we've got that configuration replacement. Next up is our Firmware Manager, which allows you to select a bunch of routers and update them in the maintenance window. So this is a super useful tool when you get into dozens, hundreds, or thousands of routers, and you don't want to either be awake to use the dude to update those, or you don't have other tools in place to manage this. So I can either select all routers, or I could filter by my home routers here, and then that's a tag that I have on my routers. I can select all of these ones, schedule an update. I can pick now or a maintenance window block between midnight and 2 a.m., between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. If I select between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., it allows me to pick my time zone. I actually happen to be in America, Chicago, so I'll actually know I am America, New York. So I'll pick that time zone. Somewhere here, there's too many of them. And I'll hit submit, and those 3 routers are queued for firmware update at 2 a.m. At 2 a.m., those guys will just chug through and start updating. Again, like I mentioned, if there's in orange some routers with trouble communicating with our system, you can see here this permissions problems exist. Somebody created this with read-only instead of full access. So obviously we won't be able to use the firmware feature. Next up is Fleet Commander. And with Fleet Commander, you can run any command, any bulk command on any number of routers. So this is super useful as a way to troubleshoot the network. You can run a trace route command. You could run a dump of the ARP table and look for a specific MAC address. You could update DNS servers or any other setting on the MikroTik that you'd like to update to as many routers as you'd like to push that command to. Our login manager is a Radius-like implementation that allows you to have a set of users that exist here on the top, and then a set of routers that exist down on the bottom that allow you to say, for example, hey, I've hired a new person and I want them to have access to all of my fleet of routers, whether that's dozens, hundreds, or thousands, instantly by adding the user here. In the same way, when we let an employee go or get rid of a contractor, or that contract has expired, we can come and just delete that user and they no longer have access to all of our routers instantly. One of the other things that's new that we haven't gone into yet is our end user dashboard. So to get there, I could click through router health, which will show me some information about the router and begin drawing real-time graphs of throughput on the router per interface. And as I scroll down and look through some of the other health and status of this router, you can see here's an end user view. What you can do from the end user view is select an email for a customer, and this will send them an email invite. They'll be able to click to activate that email address on our system, and then they would be able to log in and take a look at the next view that we'll show. And so on the admin dashboard here, you can see that we show all of the devices connected to the Wi-Fi and what their signal strengths are. And so the easy to use end user view will come up here and it'll show them what their device looks like. And if they are invited to multiple devices, there'll be a drop-down list here for them to pick which device they want to manage. But really, this is meant to be quick and easy for a customer to take a look and see what their Wi-Fi SSID and passphrase is. They can take a look and see what their uptime is, IP info. There's router speed here is going to be a speed test coming in the next few weeks. And then device bandwidth usage. I think I've got a device here that I can start connected to the network, that I can start getting some traffic to pop up here. I'm just going to fire up a YouTube and let's pull up a video, and we should see if I refresh so that we're collecting data now. And you can see there, my device now is using 1 meg of traffic. Another device there is using a little bit of traffic. And we can see our bandwidth data spikes. And if the system provides a host name, you'll be able to see what the name of that device is. So it can be super useful for finding out, which device in the home, maybe it's a Roku that's using all the bandwidth of the circuit, and we want to know that we can show that to the customer. Finally, we've got cards down here that show the connected device's Wi-Fi signal strength and a little bit of info about them. So for example, I saw this 231 here. I can come down here, find the 231 and flip the card over, and I can see this device's MAC address and match it up to a device on the network if it hasn't provided a host name. Unfortunately, this happens to be an Apple iPhone. Apple just released a firmware update for their devices that prevents it from sending host names. So that wraps up what I have for showing our software. Let me pull back here and jump over to So I appreciate everyone taking the time to watch with us, and we will add this to our YouTube and open up for any questions. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and type into the chat. If you're having trouble finding the chat, let's see here. We've got a couple of questions already. Why port 8080 instead of port 443 default? And so that's part of that is because I mentioned our Admiral versus RemoteWinBox. I'm not sure when you jumped in whether you caught that whole part of the conversation, but Admirals are 1U appliance that can go in your data center, or it can be co-located in ours. And RemoteWinBox is our shared cloud. We share a code base between the Admiral and the RemoteWinBox. And so in the cloud, we're plentiful on IP addresses, but sometimes in our customer networks, there's not enough IPs to go around. So we leave 443 for the VPN tunnel that gets established between the MikroTik device and the service. And that allows us to use 8080. We have to pick something else to use for the app server. And so that's why 8080 shows there. Another question we have here. It would be easier for us to show permissions issues in another spot. That's a helpful feedback tip. Another question we have, VPN ports are always accessible or locked to specific IPs? Sure. So a little bit about our security. If a customer comes in and creates an account, that account can add children account to it so that you can share routers among a company and have multiple users on there. And so each company has its own firewall. So if your company tries to access your routers, that's allowed. And if any other company tries to access your routers, that's firewall blocked. So you can access your equipment from a variety of IPs. If you go to Starbucks or a hotel or wherever you may need to go, and you decide, hey, I need to get access from here, you log into our dashboard and it'll say, hey, we detected that you're coming from a new IP. So there will be a fix it button there. And if you click that, that IP address will be allowed for your company to connect. Next question. So I see RouterOS 7 just came out. Does our software support it? Yep. So the only thing we've seen with RouterOS 7 is that if you're on the release candidate, there is some trouble. It's not on our side, it's on MikroTik's side, that the CPU will go really, really high and then cause some trouble on that router. But the stable version that's just released seems to work just fine. Let's see. How often do we do polling? So we do router polling every 5 minutes. All of the dashboard is queried over the API. Backups and Fleet Commander both use SSH, but everything else you see uses the API. And we also query real time. So this is not 5-minute old data or seconds old data. Most of the data in the dashboard when you're watching the real-time graphs is queried in real time, but the historical data is kept to 5-minute increments. Let's see another question here. Does my provider uses CGNAT, so my IP changes all the time? How can your service still work with that? Yeah, so the CGNAT is carrier grade NAT. You'll find that a lot of times on your cell phone. So if you're using your cell phone or you're using your cell phone as a hotspot, your IP address will change, regularly. And so if you are in that scenario, there is a button to help you out with our service. You navigate to the health page that you saw there, and then scroll down to the bottom, and at the bottom is an Open Now button. You click on that Open Now button, and for 10 seconds, we will open up the MikroTik WinBox port for you. And then as long as you connect over the next 10 seconds, we'll allow that to connect for the remainder of a day. After a day, you'll have to go through that process again. The reason for that is obviously for security. We want to keep that locked down as much as possible so that your routers aren't exposed. One other thing to note is that if you have any other questions, it's worthwhile to take a look at our frequently asked questions and also check into our documentation. We've got documentation in a file that you can take a look at in text, and that's available from the dashboard under the documentation link. And we're working on doing documentation videos to make it so that it's easy to see how each of the features and functions work with some video documentation. Any other questions? All right, well, it looks like we've got a couple minutes early here. I appreciate everyone's time. Thanks for joining. And if we don't have any other questions, we'll wrap up and have a great day.